I imagine this is how Aronofsky pitched the movie to Paramount.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Genius! Mother! Mother! I'm looking forward to the sequel, Father! And complete the trilogy with children! And the unwanted fourth film that's ultimately a cash grab, Cousins! Mother is a story about a young couple, well, not a young couple. One of them is young, the other is older. It's a balanced couple who live secluded from the world in their newly constructed home. Javier Bardem portrays a poet who is struggling with writer's block, and Jennifer Lawrence plays his wife, who is working to rebuild their dream home. One night, they are visited by an anonymous stranger, played by Ed Harris. Bardem's character, who is referred to as him, allows the stranger to stay the night, and then he invites the stranger's family and friends to be guests in their home. Lawrence's character, who is simply referred to as Mother, becomes stressed by all the unwanted guests in her home, and she begins to lose her grasp on reality. Right off the bat, I did not like this movie, but I'm glad that it exists. It's an original story, and more importantly, it's a horror movie. And as a devout fan of the horror genre, I want more original horror movies. Really, how many good horror movies do we get in a year? So when a studio grants a madman like Darren Aronofsky the freedom to create this psychological thriller, it's really encouraging for the state of Hollywood and horror movies moving forward. Now, Aronofsky is known for such films like The Wrestler, Black Swan, Requiem for a Dream, Pi, which is a movie about math, not dessert, okay? You've been warned. And Noah, which is actually a pretty good interpretation of the story of Noah's Ark. He's known for crafting these films based around complex and obsessive characters who either have to fight off their own demons, society, or really both, to find that inner peace. And he's an expert at weaving religious and mystical themes within his plots. But really the best part about Aronofsky is that he takes risks with his movies. His first film is about a guy who's obsessed with math, and that film is a masterpiece. He basically made a Bible-inspired superhero film. It's like a comic book adaptation based on the Bible, okay? So that makes, Jesus is like Stan Lee in a way. He made a movie about ballet dancers, okay? And that Natalie Portman won an Oscar for that movie. The guy is a great director, and what I love about him is that he takes risks. And it's safe to say that Mother is probably the biggest risk of his career, and it's unknown if that risk will pay off, but he does have people talking about this movie, and people are pissed. Or they're elated. It's depending on who you talk to. The waters are very polarizing out there. Please, dip a toe, feel it out. There's going to be a lot of screaming on YouTube over the next couple of weeks. Let's start with the good news. As expected with a cast this strong, the acting is top-notch, and Michelle Pfeiffer gives the standout performance for me as Woman. That's the character's name. It's just Woman. It almost feels like a passing of the torch between Pfeiffer and Lawrence, the old school versus new school, with Pfeiffer showing up her successor by stealing every scene that the duo share. Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence are also very convincing as the married couple dealing with a strenuous and almost distant relationship. Domhnall Gleeson also gives a brief but strong and surprising performance because I didn't even know that he was going to be in this until he barged through the door. This guy is in like every movie, dude. He's the Irish version of Samuel Jackson. Do you know that in 2015 he was in Ex Machina, Brooklyn, Star Wars, and The Revenant? His 2015 filmography is better than Ashton Kutcher's entire filmography. And now for the bad news. The plot is absolutely senseless. This is a movie that starts off as interesting and then it evolves into something that cannot be explained because it's nonsense. It begins with an interesting look into a man's obsession with defeating his writer's block, and he fuels this obsession by allowing his sycophant fans to live in and essentially destroy his house while also destroying his marriage. Initially, I was intrigued by the plot because I anticipated that this unique fight against writer's block would transform into something bizarre and mind-bending, something that would leave me feeling empty and tormented and asking questions, mostly because the movie was marketed as the most controversial film since A Clockwork Orange. And that may very well be the case. We'll see how it plays out in the upcoming weeks. But the story never realizes its nightmarish potential. Instead, it relies on shocking imagery and heavy-handed religious allegories and metaphors to deliver anxiety-inducing scares. But it's not scary. it's just annoying. The third act kind of reminded me of the third act for Requiem of a Dream, and if you've seen that film, you know it's very hard to watch the last 20 minutes. The characters find themselves in extremely uncomfortable positions, and I would imagine that filming the third act to Mother was probably very uncomfortable for the actors, because it's literally a mess, narratively and physically. The couple's mansion essentially morphs into a mosh pit that transforms into a Vietnam battle scene, and it ends with a cultish sacrificial offering where all of the guests in the house are enjoying some baby back ribs right before they kick the crap out of Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, it's like, what the hell? It's a goddamn nightmare, but the worst part is that the nightmare never becomes believable. It's a nightmare that I wanted to wake up from, not because I was scared, but because I was annoyed. I just wanted it to be over. In fact, it became a bit humorous for me because about halfway through the movie, I began to imagine Mother as a comedy instead of a psychological thriller. I had my own little private laughing track in my head. Every time a new guest knocked on the door, or when Jennifer Lawrence's pleas for help were met with comedic indifference or blatant disrespect, I chuckled because it was ridiculous. It wasn't scary. The more ridiculous the plot and the characters became, the more I was amused. But Mother is not a comedy. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not even sure that Darren Aronofsky knows what it is. He wrote the script in 5 days, which is not surprising because the movie feels like an improvised fever dream without any room for interpretation or query because the metaphors and allegories were obvious. Mother, Mother Mary, Mother Nature, Cult of Personality, the collective versus the individual, Adam and Eve, the rib wound and Ed Harris, the two competing sons. If I missed anything, just yell at me in the comments. Like I said previously, I'm glad that this movie exists because I enjoy films like this that challenge the audience. But to me, Mother wasn't a challenge. It was more of an exercise of my patience. And I know what people are going to say. You didn't like this film because you didn't get it. Listen, I'm the king of not getting stuff, okay? I can't solve riddles. I'm not that clever. I watch movies that are psychedelic, surrealist, psychological thrillers all the time that I don't fully understand. I just spent almost 2 weeks trying to piece together the finale for Twin Peaks. People are still trying to do that. But for me, this wasn't that type of film. I felt it was a surface level film. I felt it was predictable, and it didn't move me in any way. I didn't feel any anxiety. I wasn't scared. I wasn't emotionally invested in the characters and their arcs. I know people are going to call it a misunderstood masterpiece. To me, it's just a very well understood piece of shit.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
So I would have to give Mother a 1 out of 10. I think it's his worst movie. I'm still a fan of Darren Aronofsky. I think he's one of the best directors we have working today. I'm not going to lose my mind over it that some people like it. That's what's great about movies. Some people are going to be moved by this film and perhaps consider it the best film of 2017. That's just not me. 1 out of 10.